Nor is a poor, pathetic, disgusting loser who takes care of his ill mother with love and affection. He took his time to prepare her medicine and handed it to her, telling her to be careful because it may be too hot. The goats outside bleated for their breakfast, and Nor informed his mom that he would take them to the valley to eat some grass. He notices her concern and promises not to go past the village's boundary. He promised to get some wild rabbits, some nuts and seeds later in the day so they could make rabbit soup for dinner. His mom calls him close and cleans up his stained face, apologizing for being unable to help him with the house chores because of her condition and urging him to live life to the fullest. Later that evening, Nor makes some rabbit soup and serves a portion on a plate which he takes to his mom. He reaches her bedside and calls out to her, but he doesn't get any response. He becomes frantic, calling out to her so she can wake up, but she doesn't move an inch. The next day, he lays her in their backyard beside his dad's resting place with some flowers on her headstone. He shed tears to mourn her loss, but he suddenly wipes his eyes and strengthens his resolve. From that day, Nor starts fending for himself, caring for the family farm and hunting animals for food. He cares for the farm animals, selling their dairy products for money at the village market. He also read books to increase his knowledge about the world and everything in it. He felled trees in the forest and chopped up the logs. He also went fishing, being so skilled that he could catch fish with his bare hands. Though Nor could fend for himself, he was lonely because he lived in the house alone. One day, Nor reaches for the top of the bookshelf using a chair, but once he grabs the book, he suddenly loses his balance and falls over. He burns the night oil reading a book which reminds him of the time his dad told him a bedtime story about an adventurer. His dad told him about an adventurer who, with the help of his friends, took down a dragon and learned some magic spells from an old sorcerer. They cured a forest of decay and obtained a life elixir that cures all diseases from the king of the dead. Nor was engrossed when his father told him that the adventurer and his friends always raised their swords to strike down evil for the sake of other people, regardless of how dire the situation was. Nor was eager to hear the story, and his father gladly obliged. Nor looked at the adventurer book and recalled his mother's words, telling him to live by his standard. The next day, after feeding the farm animals, he goes to his parents' place of rest and informs them that he will be leaving town for the first time. He tells them about his dream to become an adventurer and bids them farewell until he returns. Nor walks through the forest until he arrives at the boundary. He suddenly gets anxious but strengthens his resolve and walks through the boundary without looking back. At night, Nor makes a campfire to keep himself warm, but suddenly gets scared when he hears a monster's screech pierce through the night sky. Nor somehow survived the night and continued his journey the next morning. He moves through the forest, and he's surprised that he has arrived at a cliff overseeing the royal capital when he peers through a bush. He takes in the view of the city and then goes down to the main gate where he asks for directions from the guards. Nor walks into the capital, admiring everything from the building to the beautiful terraces. He hadn't seen so many people going about their daily lives before. He takes everything in as he walks through the city towards the guild. He spots an adventurer on his way, and his eyes immediately light up with admiration, strengthening his resolve to become an adventurer even more. Nor arrives at the guild, and he walks up to the reception desk. The receptionist tells him off, saying the guild isn't meant for kids, but Nor tells him he wants to become an adventurer. The receptionist tells him he would only make his parents worry about his safety, but Nor informed him that he was an orphan. The receptionist realizes he has no choice, so he tells Nor to head to the Royal Training School to receive lessons. The receptionist advises him to acquire skills like a sword or magic art before being placed in a suitable rank. Nor heads over to a sword master's house immediately after remembering how the heroes in the book took down the dragon with a single stroke of their sword. He arrives at the sword master's house and walks in to sign up as an apprentice. He joins the other apprentices to practice when an apprentice sword goes up in flames. The sword master gives a nod of approval, making the apprentice happy to graduate. Nor keeps practicing his sword skill, but after a few months, he still can't trigger any effect from his sword. The sword master tells him to give up trying to master the sword art because it is a colossal waste of time. The sword master advises him to choose a different career path because he only managed to parry a sword attack after months of training. He suggests a different training school to Nor, and Nor reluctantly agrees. He goes to a warrior training school to sharpen his fighting skills and begins training at the school with the other apprentices. After a few months, despite acknowledging his efforts, the schoolmaster tells him he can't continue at the school because he only managed to improve his skills slightly. The master didn't want a casualty on his hands, so he told Noor to try out another training school. Noor heads over to a hunter class school, but his apprenticeship is revoked because he can't handle delicate weaponry. He then heads over to a thief class training school, but after a few months, he is kicked out because he doesn't have the skills needed to be a spy. He heads over to a magic school, but the sorcerer kicks him out after months of training because all he could manage to conjure was a flicker of flame. The sorcerer was surprised that Noor was so magically deficient because he had never seen anyone like that. Noor then heads to the cleric school, but the chief cleric turns him down despite acknowledging that his low-level healing was impressive. Noor walks off dejectedly and returns to the receptionist with the news that he couldn't obtain a skill. The receptionist is surprised that Noor couldn't obtain a skill despite spending the full 3-month terms at each training school. Noor leaves the capital with his head hanging low after the receptionist tells him he can't be registered as an adventurer. Noor is disappointed that he isn't a prodigy and returns to his parents' place of rest to tell them he doesn't have talent for anything. He suddenly decides to train by himself and obtain some skills. He recalls his swordmaster advising him to keep practicing a skill until he masters it. Noor keeps practicing his parry skill, the only skill he could obtain during his sword training. He keeps training every day with his wooden sword, and after a year's worth of training, he can now evade 10 swords at once using his parry skill. After 3 years of training, Noor can evade 100 swords in one breath, but hasn't gained any new skills. He keeps training despite realizing that his hope of becoming an adventurer is a pipe dream. Noor keeps at his training despite making no progress on other skills. He continues training till his sword breaks in his hands. He vows to try harder and train more intensely until he becomes stronger. After more than a decade of training, Noor can parry more than 1,000 wooden swords in a single breath, but he has yet to obtain a new skill. The next day, he takes one last chance on his dream and heads to the guild in the royal capital. He lists his skills on the form, but the new receptionist isn't convinced of his capabilities because he only has one useful skill. The receptionist suggests Noor takes lessons from the training schools in the capital, but tells her he already knows about the school because he's been through all of them. The receptionist is surprised he's still unskilled despite going through all the training schools. The receptionist informs him that he can't register because he doesn't make the cut, and Noor wonders if there isn't a way around that. The old receptionist suddenly comes out, telling Noor not to pick on his new hire. Noor says hello to the old receptionist, and the receptionist takes some time before remembering Noor from several years ago. They catch up over a cup of tea, and Noor tells the old receptionist he couldn't learn any new skill despite training over a decade. The receptionist tells Noor he needs more than one recognizable skill to attain E rank, the lowest adventurer rank possible. Noor makes peace with the fact that he can't do anything but give up on his dreams. The old receptionist tells Noor about the F rank he can try out for if he obeys certain conditions. The conditions forbid him from taking any quests or gathering materials outside the city. He tells him he's restricted to miscellaneous tasks around the city. The old receptionist doesn't think the job description is worth the trouble, but to his surprise, Noor immediately accepts it. Noor registers as an F rank adventurer, and the receptionist hands him his license. Noor gladly accepts the license and goes around town doing menial jobs for people around the capital using his low-level magic spells to help him complete the tasks easily. He keeps practicing his parry skills in his free time and trying other lesser skills to delight the kids in the capital. Noor was glad he had finally achieved his dream of becoming an adventurer and being useful to people. He looks at his F-rank license with pride and decides not to go for a high rank because he would bite off more than he could chew. Noor diligently takes up menial jobs all around town to earn a living. He helps Grandma Stella clear out her sewers, and she thanks him for it, hoping to meet him again someday. Noor moves on to a construction site where he moves 10 times more bricks than the other workers. After a day's work, the employer gives him his paycheck, thanking him for helping them keep to the construction schedule. Noor is happy to give a helping hand, but he's distracted by a light source coming from a cave. He suddenly hears a cry for help, and he rushes into the cave without a moment's hesitation. He arrives at the scene to see a group of knights trying to protect a little girl from a giant minotaur monster. Noor can't believe that such monsters exist in real life. The knights try to protect the girl, but the minotaur takes down the leader with a single stroke of its axe. Noor rushes over to the leader and tries to help him, but realizes he can't help him. The other knights are enraged by this and try to get revenge for their fallen leader, but they meet the same fate. The girl is left at the mercy of the minotaur, but Noor suddenly swings into action. He uses his stone throw skill to draw the Minotaur's attention to him. The Minotaur is enraged and it rushes at him. Nor begins running, making the Minotaur chase him, but he suddenly stands his ground. As the Minotaur tries to strike him, he uses his parry skill, sending the Minotaur flying. The Minotaur regains its feet and it begins striking Nor with renowned vigor. Nor continues to parry its strikes, but his sword begins to chip, and he almost succumbs to the force of the Minotaur. Nor tries to look for the right moment to counterattack, but knows he won't take down the Minotaur because he doesn't have any attack skills. The Minotaur turns its attention to the girl and tries to take her down, but Nor uses his movement skill to close the gap and parry its strike. Nor's sword shatters, but his resolve to protect the frightened girl behind him doesn't waver, even if he can't become an adventurer. He recalls his father's story about the adventurers who always raised their swords to counter evil for the sake of their friends. The Minotaur strikes again with all its might, but Nor parries it with the broken sword, which sends the axe backwards, taking the Minotaur's head off its shoulders. Nor is disappointed that he barely survived the encounter with the Minotaur and realizes that he's not strong enough to become an adventurer. The sword crumbles to pieces in his hands, but the girl thanks him for protecting her from the Minotaur. Princess Lindbergh asks for his name, but he tells her that he's no one important and he walks away. More knights rush to the scene to meet the princess, happy that she is unharmed. Nor returns to the capital, reeling from his encounter with the Minotaur. He couldn't believe he had such a hard time taking down a random loose cow. He decides to train even more and become stronger. The knights clear out the scene of the battle, conducting repairs to the buildings that were damaged. The deceased are covered up and Princess Lindbergh says a prayer for their departure. Her escort, Inez, suddenly runs up to her because she is worried that the princess is hurt, but Princess Lindbergh assures her that she's alright. Inez regrets not accompanying her, but the princess tells her she doesn't need an escort when embarking on a trial for the right to the throne. She reminds Inez that she was the one who insisted on such conditions for the trials, and she tells her not to beat herself up for it. She apologizes for making her worry about her safety. Lord Dalkin approaches them, telling them to return to the castle because Lord Rain wants an audience. Princess Lindbergh returns to the castle with Lord Dalkin, who submits a report to Lord Rain. Lord Rain is surprised that a Minotaur was present in the cutty because they only inhabit the deepest part of the underworld. He figures out that someone summoned the Minotaur from the underworld, and Lord Dalkin tells him the Minotaur was summoned by a ring discovered on one of the merchant's fingers. The magic stone on the ring was of such high quality that it was nearly impossible to get in any market. Lord Rain wasn't convinced that a rich family was behind the Minotaur's appearance because it would be difficult for them to trap the monster in the ring. He tells Lord Rain that Oaken deduced that the ring originated from Dorida's kingdom because of the embedded crest. Lord Rain isn't surprised because Dorida's was always looking for ways to weaken them so he could overrun them with his forces. Lord Rain tells Dalkin they need to be careful because Dorida's left his crest behind so they would know he was behind it. He figures out that the ruler was hoping for an all-out war between them so they could finally get their hands on the relics of the Dungeon of the Lost, a very vital resource. Lord Rain sighs when he remembers the report about the man who saved the princess. He recounts how the man defeated the Minotaur in seconds with nothing but a broadsword. Dalkin recalls that the Corps told him the man disappeared before they could see him. Rain wonders about the secret man's identity, wanting to know more about such a powerful man. Nor returns to the guild the following morning, and the old receptionist is surprised that he's still breathing. Nor doesn't understand why he's surprised, and the old man recounts the event of the previous evening about a monster appearing at the entrance of the dungeon. The old man assumed that Nor was a victim because he heard it appeared around the construction site where he worked for the day. He tells Nor his fears worsened when he didn't see Nor around the guild after the event. Nor apologizes for causing the old man trouble. He explains that some shady characters were tailing him the previous night, so he went home. The old man tells him he was lucky he didn't encounter the monster. In his time, the old man was a rank adventurer, but knew he would have fallen victim to the Minotaur's power. Nor is surprised to learn that the Minotaur monster is that powerful, but he's glad he only bumped into a random axe-wielding cow. Nor asks the old man what happened to the monster. The old man tells Nor a mysterious man took down the monster with a single blow. Nor can't believe some people are so strong. The old man gives him payment for the job done the previous day and asks Nor how he feels about getting a decent job. Nor tells him he's content being an F-rank adventurer, but the old man tells him he can earn more money without giving a percentage to the guild if he gets a decent job. The princess suddenly appears behind Noor, glad to have found him again. She removes her disguise and Noor recognizes her from the previous night. She tells him she found him using her long-distance detection magic, and Noor thinks she's a thief-class adventurer. She tells him she's in the magic class, but knows all 6 skill systems. Noor is impressed by this, but she tells him there's nothing impressive about it because she only knows the basics and she's embarrassed about it. Noor doesn't understand why she's embarrassed when she tells him they need to continue their conversation outside after noticing that her presence drew attention from the adventurers in the guild. The old man suddenly grabs Noor and asks him what he did to offend the princess, but Noor tells him he didn't do anything that would get him in trouble. She tells him no one will eavesdrop on their conversation because she will use concealment and soundproofing skills. Noor asks the old man for advice and he tells him to go with the princess, advising him not to make any more mistakes. Noor follows the princess outside despite misunderstanding the old man's advice. Noor follows the princess past some guards who are having difficulty finding the man from the previous night. Noor points out to the princess that they are looking for someone, but she tells him not to worry because they can't be seen. They get to a secluded location, and the princess stops to thank Noor for saving her life the previous night. She tells him he saved more than just her life by taking down the monster, but Noor tells her that's a far stretch. He apologizes for interfering in her fight because he was sure she could handle the Minotaur with her outstanding skills. The princess tells him that's not true because she doesn't know how things would have turned out if he hadn't intervened. Noor accepts her thanks but tells him she wants to compensate him with a reward to show her gratitude. Noor tells her that he doesn't need anything else because her thanks were enough for him, but she tells him she has to reward him to thank him properly. She informs him that her father would also want to meet and thank him, but he declines because he's content with the thanks she already gave him. She asks him if he's having trouble with anything, but he tells her his life is all rainbows and sunflowers. She tells him her father could help him get some territory, but he tells her he has everything he needs. The princess suddenly becomes teary-eyed and tells Noor that he must accept whatever she grants him to show her gratitude. She tells him she won't move an inch unless he accepts her gratitude, which makes him remember his time at the cleric's door when he refused to leave the training cleric's house until he was trained. He sympathizes with the princess and agrees to meet her dad only if they don't do anything extravagant. She's happy that he has agreed and tells him to follow closely behind her, which surprises him because he didn't think he would have to meet her father immediately. She tells him she doesn't want anyone to spot them as she uses concealment and detection occlusion magic to hide their presence. She takes him to the castle, but Noor doesn't know it's the royal castle. He's impressed by how huge the place is and wonders if that's her house. Noor still hadn't figured out that the girl was the princess. She invites him in and he follows her into the castle. On their way to the main castle, the princess asks Noor for his name and he tells her. He asks her for her name and she takes a moment to apologize and then introduces herself as Lindbergh. She tells Noor to call her Lynn because that's her adventure name. They keep moving through the castle and Noor figures out that Noor comes from a wealthy family. He recalls the old man's advice telling him not to make dumb mistakes and he now understands what he means. Inez walks up to the princess to welcome her and Lynn asks her for her father's whereabouts. She informs Lynn that her father is discussing with Lord Rain in the audience chamber. She notices Noor and she asks Lynn about him. Lynn tells her Noor is the person who risked his life to save her. Inez is surprised to hear this and decides to accompany them to meet Lynn's father. Noor thinks Inez is the family maid and he wonders how she gets any chores done while wearing such heavy equipment. Inez leads them towards the audience chambers, but they're stopped by Gilbert who demands Noor's identity. Inez tells him to step aside because he's the princess's guest and Gilbert figures out that he's the talk of the town. Gilbert is disappointed because Noor isn't such an eyeful, but Inez tells him not to be rude. She tells him to accompany them to the chamber because she doesn't fully trust Noor and Gilbert agrees. The king is pissed that Doritas doesn't keep to his end of the deal after signing a peace treaty. Rain wasn't surprised because Doritas previously requested the rights to the dungeon from the king, but he declined. Doritas swore that the king would live to regret his words and Rain tells the king that may not be the only threat to their kingdom. The doors suddenly open and Lynn walks in with everyone accompanying her. Noor notices that the old man, sitting on the throne, is Lynn's father. Her brother, Rain, notices she's wearing her concealment cloak and he figures out that she went outside the castle gates. She tells him she went to look for the man who saved her life. She introduces Noor as the man who saved her the previous night. Noor apologizes for coming in such an unkempt state. He blames Lin for bringing him over in such a hurry, but the king tells him how he's dressed doesn't matter as he thanks him for coming. Nor tells the king he doesn't have the proper etiquette because he's not an aristocrat, and he apologizes in advance for anything informal that he does. The king is content to speak with him as a normal person, and he shakes his hand, humbly thanking him for saving his daughter. Nor accepts the king's gratitude, deciding to head home and have a hot bath, but the king tells him he can't let him go without rewarding him. The king asks him if he desires land or money, but Nor tells him he has no such desire. The king asks him if he wants rare treasures from the dungeon, but Nor tells him he doesn't want that either. He tells the king he doesn't want any fancy gift because his gratitude is more than enough. The king is surprised that Nor doesn't want treasures, so he tries to think of something that could interest Nor. He walks up to his throne and draws a huge sword which he shows to Nor, asking his thoughts. Rain advises the king against giving out the sword, but the king tells him it's better to give it out than to leave it at the mercy of time. He knew no one would notice it was missing if he swapped it with the replica that was made. He presents the sword to Nor, who figures out that the sword is priceless as soon as he grabs the hilt. He tells the king he can't accept his gift, but the king tells him it's a hand-me-down sword he picked up during his travels because he liked it. The king tells him to give it a swing, and Nor enhances his strength before giving the sword a swing which almost creates a storm in the room. Everyone is surprised that he can swing the sword with such force, and the king is even more surprised that he can swing it one-handed. Nor accepts the sword because he can swing it so easily though it's heavy. The king asks Nor for a favor, by helping him toughen Lin up, but Nor tells him he has nothing to teach her. Nor tells the king Lin would be the one to decide for herself if she wants to get stronger, and he advises him not to interfere with her decision. The king agrees with him, so Nor informs the king that he's leaving. The king thanks him again before bidding him farewell. Nor walks out with the sword which he thinks would be great for training, but he feels he got something valuable from the king. He suddenly notices that the sword would be a perfect fit to clear Grandma Stella's drainage, so he decides to try it out the next day. Inez suddenly stops him, telling him she wants a word with him. She informs Nor that her job is to protect Lin from any danger, and Nor figures out that she isn't a maid after all. Inez introduces herself to Nor as the vice captain of the family's warrior corps. She tells Nor she was appointed as the loyal shield of Lin since she was little, which means she must protect her at the cost of her life. She offers to help Nor with anything he needs because he saved her life by protecting Lin. Nor accepts her compliment, but she warns him not to get too informal with the king in the future because she won't be able to tolerate his disrespect. She asks him for his name because she didn't catch it earlier, and he introduces himself as Nor. The mention of his name draws a reaction from her, and Nor thinks he's done something wrong, but she tells him he hasn't. She tells him she's returning to her duties and leaves him. Nor turns to leave, but he's cornered by Gilbert, who challenges him to a duel before he leaves, and Nor realizes he won't be allowed to return home if things continue like that. Gilbert leads Nor to the training ground as Nor wonders why he challenged him to a duel. He was already exhausted from all his work, but they arrived at the training grounds and Gilbert told him they would be engaging in a mock battle. Nor is surprised because he was never talented enough to be assigned a sparring partner in the different training schools. Other people are practicing in the training room when they arrive, but they vacate the floor so Gilbert can have his match with Nor. Gilbert walks over to the weapons desk and he asks Nor to take his pick from the available weapons. Nor picks up a wooden sword, eager to get into the mock battle with Gilbert. They both face off at the center of the training room. Nor worries that he won't be able to match Nor's skills, but decides to take that as a chance to train with someone more skillful than him. He wants to utilize this opportunity because it's the best he has gotten since mastering his parry skill. The spectators wonder how Nor was so unfortunate that he got into a mock battle with Gilbert. They are sure Gilbert will smack him around until he passes on to the afterlife. Gilbert announces the start of the match, his face suddenly getting serious. He swings his wooden staff at Nor, who easily sidesteps his attack. Gilbert takes a moment and then strikes at Nor several times in quick succession, but Nor dodges all his strikes without as much as a scratch. Nor was impressed with how polished Gilbert's movement was. He knew Gilbert must have trained endlessly to get himself to such a flawless level. Though Nor was impressed with how fluid and measured his movement was, he wondered why his attacks were so slow. Nor keeps dodging Gilbert's attacks easily, and then figures out that Gilbert is holding back because he doesn't want to use his full strength against a low-level opponent. Noor suddenly calls a timeout, which surprises Gilbert as he tells him not to hold back so much, even if he's trying to go easy on him. Gilbert isn't sure if he is holding back because Noor is an ordinary human, but he decides to honor Noor's word. He suddenly starts attacking Noor with renewed vigor, and Noor acknowledges that he's faster, but he notices that Gilbert always leaves himself open as he dodges his attack. Noor concludes that Gilbert is trying to lure him into close quarters so he can have the advantage, so he decides not to take the bait. Gilbert is fuming internally, wondering why none of his attacks are connecting. He decides to try a new attack pattern by feinting, which makes Noor dodge away. He thinks he has Noor dead to rights as he strikes with his staff, but Noor somehow dodges his attack. Noor tells him he can speed up his attack because he can handle faster attacks, but Gilbert isn't pleased to hear this. Noor contemplates that Gilbert is already fighting at maximum power and realizes he has gotten stronger. Noor is hopeful that he can win the duel, but suddenly sees sparks as Gilbert attacks him with a super attack. Gilbert is sure that his attack found its mark, but Noor dodges it at the very last moment. While Gilbert is surprised that Noor dodged his attack, Noor concedes, accepting defeat to Gilbert. He leaves the castle, grateful that Gilbert didn't mow him down. Meanwhile, the spectators wonder how Noor dodged Gilbert's super attack. They conclude that the wind of Gilbert's attack pushed Noor out of the way because they couldn't believe someone could dodge it. They are sure he would have been mincemeat if Gilbert used a real spear. Gilbert sits quietly in a corner, recalling the first day he held a spear. From that day, he knew he had the talent to handle a spear in battle. He took down his opponent in a duel, to the admiration of spectators in a village he visited, who gathered to witness the match. He trained constantly to polish his techniques, but was always bored because he couldn't find anyone strong enough to thrill him in battle. The village head asked him if he enjoyed the village bit. Noor told him the fight was the same as usual. The village head recognized him as the man who went to different areas looking for strong opponents. The village head informed him that no villager could match his strength. Gilbert told the head he had to search for strong opponents because he had defeated every worthy opponent in the capital. He left the capital with high hopes that he would meet someone stronger. The village head informed him about summons from warring countries. He told him strong troops were being summoned and advised him to try out and see if he would encounter someone strong. Gilbert returned to the capital where he kept hunting demons until he heard that someone strong joined the military corps. He challenged them all to a duel, but took them all down easily. He still wasn't satisfied as he craved someone who could present him with a real challenge. He was so bored that he was almost going insane. He couldn't believe he was surrounded by such weaklings. One day when he was resting under a tree, the sword master approached him, and he expressed his boredom to the sword master. The sword master suggested he duel with Inez, but Gilbert told him he would come out on top if they did, though he admitted she was strong. Gilbert was disappointed there weren't more people like the swordmaster and figured out that the swordmaster was bored out of his mind since he had to train people who weren't worth their salt. The swordmaster told him he was just doing his duty to protect the capital until someone who surpassed him would appear. Gilbert was hopeful he was alive to witness such a spectacle because he didn't know how long he would survive the boredom. Gilbert was enthusiastic about getting to know the man who defeated the Minotaur single-handedly, but after their duel, he was puzzled by Noor's ways. He recalls how he had no interest in material things and how discourteous he was during his audience with the king. Gilbert sized Noor up during the audience and didn't think Noor could take down the Minotaur, but after their mock battle, he was more than convinced of his abilities. He was sure his ultimate ability would bring Noor to his knees, but he was humbled after Noor dodged his attack. He had no idea how he dodged the attack and was ready to accept defeat when Noor called the fight off. Noor was humiliated that Gilbert was holding back because they were fighting in front of his subordinates. Gilbert didn't understand why Noor called the fight to an end, and he tried to convince him otherwise, to no avail. He took his gift and left the training room, hoping to meet Gilbert again. Gilbert suddenly noticed some cracks on the floor, and he realized that Noor somehow evaded his technique. Gilbert is glad things are finally getting exciting in the capital because he has found someone who can evade his ultimate technique at full power. Noor heads back home with his head hanging low after witnessing Gilbert's amazing technique. He kicks himself for being too quick to praise himself, thinking he has gotten stronger. He used his physical enhancement and feather step skills to get out of Gilbert's range, but he knew that he wouldn't have made it if Gilbert didn't hold back. Noor is grateful that Gilbert helped put his pride in check by humbling him even while holding back his true powers. Noor decides to toughen up even more after Gilbert just proved to him that he's still weak. The following day, Gilbert clears out the town's drainage with the broadsword. He's surprised by how efficiently the sword clears out the drainage, easily taking out the stubborn stuff that usually sticks to the bottom of the drain. The villagers are surprised by how quickly and effectively Nor cleared the grandma's drain, and they commend him for it. Nor is grateful to Lin's dad for giving him the sword as another villager asks him for his drainage cleaning services. Though his drainage clearing job is going well, Nor is worried because the construction site closed after the Minotaur incident, which rid him of his soil hauling job. He's worried he won't get more jobs if jobs dry up in the capital. He thinks of ways to utilize the broadsword to the villagers' benefit, but everything he thinks of is worth more than he can afford. He's disappointed he couldn't obtain more skills from the training schools despite attending them all to due term. Lin suddenly walks up to him in his relaxation spot in the forest, and they exchange greetings. Nor recalls Inee's threat, so he addresses Lin formally, but she tells him to address her by her adventurer name. Nor wonders why she came looking for him in the forest, and she tells him the guildmaster directed her to his location after she came looking for him at the guild. Nor concludes that Nor used her special skill to find him because he didn't tell the guildmaster his exact location. He asks her why she came looking for him, and she asks him to accept her as his page. Nor doesn't know the duties of a page, so Lin explains it to him, telling him she would be his apprentice. She tells him she just wants to hand around him and promises not to cause him trouble. Nor turns down her request, which makes her wonder if she offended him during their first meeting. She promises to be useful to him, telling him of her achievement as the youngest person to gain skills in all 6 skill disciplines. Nor tells her he has nothing to teach her and she has nothing to offer him because he can do everything he needs to be done. Lin tries to entice him with the fees he would be paid as her instructor, but he tells her he's not interested. Lin tries to sell herself to Nor so he can accept her as his apprentice, but he tells her he has no use for her. Lin is sad that Nor doesn't think she would be useful, so she decides to prove her worth to him. She brings out her wand and then summons icicles, which she melts completely with flame magic. She tells Nor her flame magic is the highest magic level she can use. She demonstrates her thief skill by drawing out her dagger, which cuts through a tree behind her. She then uses her magic sword to unleash Divine Slash, the sacred class skill of a swordsman, which is very effective against undead creatures. She wants to continue demonstrating her abilities, but Nor stops her. She mistakes this as confirmation that Nor has accepted her as his page, but he tells her he hasn't. Nor wonders why she was trying so hard to become his apprentice. He feels bad for himself after witnessing her abilities, and he wonders why she thinks he's a suitable person to become her tutor. He tells her the skills she demonstrated proved that there was nothing he could teach her. Lin tries to convince Nor that she can be useful to him, and he decides to show her how skillfully retarded he is. He shows her his tiny flame skill, and she is surprised. She returns to the castle, remembering tales from the training schools about a young boy without skills. Everyone at the training schools thought the stories were a fairy tale because they couldn't believe someone could be so powerless. She also didn't believe that a 12-year-old would go through the rigorous courses of all 6 schools without dropping out when even men struggled to survive for 3 days. She recalls Oaken showing her his tiny flame skill, but his tiny flame was larger than usual. Oaken told her he had over 200 years to practice his magic, which was why his tiny flame was larger than average. Linus uses her tiny flame magic and wonders if she will eventually make hers bigger. She was surprised that when Nor used his tiny flame magic, his flame was larger than Oaken's, who had practiced magic longer than Nor had lived. He told her that his other 5 class skills are low level, just like his magic skill, and he asked if she now understood why he couldn't accept her as his page. Liney was sure that Nor's other skills were extraordinary and wondered why she showed off some high-level skills she had memorized. She recalls how Nor stopped the Minotaur's attack, but she's surprised that he never bragged about his power to anyone. She realizes that Nor won't yield to anyone because he's strong physically and mentally. She vows to learn to achieve strength like that because she wants to support her brother and lead the capital to greatness when it's their turn to rule. Later that evening, Nor finishes his dinner and comes out of the diner when Lin suddenly approaches. She tells him she understands that he has been trying to teach her to forsake her pride and immaturity. She makes a personal vow to follow Nor's footsteps until he finds her worthy to be acknowledged as his page. She calls him her instructor because the values and convictions she and her family had sought for generations reside in him. She doesn't want to pass up on such a golden opportunity, but Noor wonders why she is so persistent. He prays for a way out of his predicament. Rain wondered why his father gave away the Black Blade so easily to an undeserving man from an unknown lineage. He remembered his father's difficult quest with the Sovereign Six while he was an adventurer to get the Prime Dungeon Relic. The blade was harder than any known material, so much so that nobody could leave a scratch on it despite using various skills and smelting techniques. This earned it the name of the Unbreakable Blade, but everyone wondered how such a resilient material ended up looking so beat up. Rain knows the blade is more valuable than any ordinary weapon, and still can't understand why his father let it go so casually. He decides to trust his father because he figures out that his father is counting on Noor to help with the state of unrest in the capital. He concludes that Noor can be their secret weapon when they find themselves in sticky situations. Meanwhile, Noor is getting breakfast and Lin is following him around like a plague. He tries to get her off by telling her she shouldn't be seen so publicly, but she tells him she can be seen publicly because she's an adventurer like him. Noor is adamant about accepting his title as her instructor because he thinks he's not worthy of it. Whenever Noor tries to convince Lin that he doesn't have the skills to be her instructor, he always complicates things, so he decides to stop trying to convince her. He plans to get a job from the guild so Lin can get off his back after seeing how simple his skills are. Noor arrives at the guild with Lin, drawing questions from the old master, who wonders why Lin is following Noor around. He asks Noor if he did something wrong the previous day, and Noor tells him that he can't explain how he got himself into his current predicament. The master decides to stop asking questions because one of the guild's rules is to keep one's nose out of others' business. Noor asks the old master for some advice, but the old master ignores his request, asking him if he came looking for work instead. Noor tells him he's looking for a two-person job. The old master informs them they can take up a goblin hunting job on the capital's outskirts if they form a party because Lin is a B-rank adventurer. Noor isn't convinced they are qualified for the request because orcs are the monsters adventurers use as their first test to gauge their strength. The old master tells him they are qualified for the quest because Lin has a high rank. Noor is hopeful they could complete a high-rank quest, but he's conflicted because he doesn't know how things would turn out. He wonders if it's wrong to take advantage of Lin's rank because all he's wanted to do since they met is send her back home. He realizes that Lin wouldn't want to form a party with him after seeing through his intentions. Lin notices Noor's emotions and she asks him what's wrong. He asks her if she has anything against his intention of using her rank to get a high-rank quest, but she tells him she's not against it. She is glad she can do something for her instructor and hopes to do more. Noor is glad to hear this, and though he feels pitiful that he has to rely on a little girl to get a reasonable quest, he's so eager to begin the quest that he leaves the guild immediately. The old master calls him back because he has yet to give them the quest's details. Noor quickly returns, and the old master hands him the official quest papers. The old master advises him to be cautious because he could still be harmed despite the quest being of a low threat level. Noor assures the old master that he knows the limit of his powers, so the old master shows them the location of their quest. Lin recognizes the location as the Forest of Monsters. The old master tells them to bring back the right ears of the monsters, without which they won't be compensated for the quest. The old master informs them that the monsters' numbers have declined, so he tells them to pick a few herbs and bring them back if they don't encounter any monsters. He advises Noor to be careful so he doesn't get hurt. They leave the guild and head straight for the capital gates. They present their papers at the capital gates and are granted passage. They set out enthusiastically on the quest and soon arrive at the Forest of the Beasts. Noor is surprised by how dense the trees in the forest are as he walks along the forest path. He had never seen trees like these in the southern forest, and Lin explains that it's because the forest has a completely different ecology. As they keep walking through the forest, Noor asks Lin what kind of monsters goblins are because he has only heard about them, but never encountered one. Lin gives him a description, telling him they usually hunt small prey, but also attack humans for sustenance. Lin is certain goblin numbers will grow exponentially if left unchecked, resulting in an overflow into human villages. She tells him that's why adventurers are tasked with controlling their numbers. She informs him that adventurers can't hunt goblins to extinction because they are vital to the forest's ecosystem. She points out other flora that are exclusive to the Forest of Beasts, which makes it suitable for use as a training ground for new adventurers to improve their skills and earn some money. Noor is impressed by how extensive Lin's knowledge is, and he's even more pitiful because he realizes there's nothing he can teach her. They keep walking through the forest, and Lin uses her detection magic to try to find the goblins to no avail. Lin is surprised because they should have encountered some of the goblins already. She now believes the rumors about the dwindling numbers of goblins in the forest. She suddenly gets a monster-like response through her deception, and she informs Nor. She tells him the distance is a bit far, but encourages him to look. As they move towards the location, Nor notes that the forest is getting darker. Lin explains that the trees in that area are older and thicker, making it difficult for sunlight to pass through the trees. She informs him that goblins usually like areas with less sunlight. Lin suddenly expresses her surprise because she detected a monster ahead of them, but it vanished instantly. Nor is surprised by this, but he suggests that the disappearance of the monster could be by natural causes. Lin agrees with him, and they continue towards the location. They arrive at the location, but it's devoid of any monsters. Nor suddenly notices a goblin being ripped apart some distance ahead of them, and he points out to Lin. Lin uses her magic to uncover the monster, which turns out to be a huge goblin that has gone rogue. Nor is surprised at the goblin's size because he has never heard of goblins that big before. Goblins were regarded as one of the weakest monsters, but Nor doesn't believe that notion anymore after seeing the goblin standing ahead of him. He has a hard time believing the monstrosity standing in front of him is a goblin, but he has to accept it because it has the features of a goblin. The goblin rips 2 trees from the ground to use as weapons, making Nor wonder how other adventurers handle them so easily. He looks at Lin for answers only to see she's freaked out. He understands that she's panicking because she has little battle experience, so he assures her that everything is alright because they are fighting a mere goblin. Though the sight of the goblin is terrifying, Nor overlooks that and focuses on taking it down. Lin also overcomes her initial fright and prepares to engage the monster in battle. Earlier, unlike Nor, she recognized the monster as the Goblin Emperor, considered an extreme threat. It is a deviant variation created by man, and such research was banned after people witnessed the result it birthed. Lin was wary because the monster consumed its kind, ingesting their power and growing stronger with each goblin consumed. That was when Nor encouraged her by saying it was a mere goblin, and Lin couldn't believe how unfazed he was. She thinks Nor was enthusiastic about taking the quest because he wanted to eliminate a threat no one else knew about. She is surprised that Nor knew about the monster when no one else did, and as he assures her that they are going to take down the goblin, she lets her fears go and prepares to engage the goblin. The goblin charges at them and tries to squash Nor with the trees, but Nor parries both strikes easily. The goblin strikes him from the side, trying to corner him, but Nor figures out his plan and parries on time to thwart it. Lin uses her wind cutter and icicle magic on the goblin, but it evades her spells. Nor is surprised that something so big can be so agile, but the monster suddenly stops and hurls a huge trunk at Lin. Nor steps in and deflects the trunk using his parry skill. The goblin hurls several more trunks at him, and he deflects them using his parry skills. Lin realizes she needs to do something because Nor is almost exhausted. Lin notices that the injury the monster had earlier is completely healed, which surprises her because it shouldn't regenerate so fast. She spots a mana stone on the goblin's head, which she points out to Nor, telling him they can take down the goblin if they get it off its head. The goblin hurls several trunks at Nor from different directions, which surprises Nor because the monster figured out the limit to his skills. Nor stands helplessly because he can't deflect the trunks at once, but Lin comes to his rescue, using her wind blast spell to blow the trunks away. The goblin sustains several injuries from this, but it instantly regenerates. Lin tells Nor the goblin is utilizing the power from the mana stone to regenerate, which means they would run out of mana if they keep engaging it head-on without a plan. Nor tells her he can't do anything if her spells are ineffective against the goblin. He suddenly gets an idea and asks Lin to use her wind blast spell to propel him from behind. Lin warns him that the spell would hurt him because it's powerful, but Nor tells her the sword would absorb the impact. It was the only plan he could think of to make him faster than the goblin. As the goblin hurls a tree trunk at Nor, Lin uses her wind blast spell to propel him forward. Nor uses his physical enhancement and feather step spells to dodge the goblin's projectiles. He uses his low heal spell to heal his injuries and then launches into the air, cutting through a trunk the goblin aimed at him and striking the mana stone on the monster's head. The mana stone comes off, making the monster lose its senses. Lin grabs the stone and runs over to Nor, who asks her to finish off the goblin so it doesn't have to suffer. Lin obliges his request, and she approaches the goblin, taking it down with her fire spell. She says a silent prayer after taking it down. Nor apologizes to the poor goblin for meeting such a horrible end after being used as a lab rat. He makes a mental note to take a break from goblin slaying because he doesn't want to get into dangerous situations. He decides to train more and get stronger before undertaking a new quest. The military corps report to Rain with the Mana Stone, informing him about the Goblin Emperor. Rain is surprised by how pure the Mana Stone is, which makes him realize that the circumstances around the incident are very unusual. He thinks the magical empire could be responsible for the incident. The Corp informs him that the Mana Stone could be the demon's heart from the holy theocracy of Mithra. He asks them if Lyn was hurt, but they tell him she only suffered minor injuries. The Corps report that the monster was there for several days because it was hidden behind a seal when it ambushed Lyn in the Forest of Beasts. Rain is surprised that they didn't detect any magic activity and asks the Corps if there weren't other signs of the monster. They report that the guild requested an investigation into the forest after noticing the number of goblins was decreasing. They present a report to Rain about suspicious activities that have happened in the last 3 months, and Rain charges them to continue with the investigation after commending them for a job well done. Nor returns to the guild, and the old master commends him for taking down a goblin because he never envisioned he would become so strong. Nor makes a mental note to celebrate his first successful quest as a new adventurer, because it is a big deal to him. Nor tells the old master it's all thanks to Lyn, and the old master figures out that he just watched from the sidelines. He praises Nor for working smart and not hard. Nor tells him he only helped out a little, but Lyn refutes his claims because she knows he was the one who did most of the work. The old master is glad Nor gained some experience, and Nor tells him he didn't know goblins were so strong till he encountered one in real life. He tells the old master he never thought the Mana Stone on the monster's head was a weak point. This surprises the old master, who wonders if Nor encountered a goblin because their Mana Stones are usually buried in their throat or heart. Lyn backs Nor up, and the old master concludes that they must have encountered a rare goblin type. He asks them for proof that they took down the monster so he can give them the quest rewards, but he notices their long faces. He asks them why they look sad, and they tell him they didn't bring any proof because they burnt the goblin to ashes. Rain puzzles the reports from the Capital Corps about strange occurrences happening within their territory. He realizes that he underestimated the enemy's invasion of their lands, so he orders the assembly of an investigation unit. He asks the Corps to include everyone who can use uncover and detect concealment skills so the occurrence at the Forest of Beasts doesn't repeat itself. He also orders for the 6 sovereigns because he deems the situation an emergency. The Corps is surprised he's summoning all 6 sovereigns, but he tells them to carry out his orders because time is of the essence. He kicks himself for his oversight, which has given the Magic Empire the upper hand to invade their country. He wonders what his country did to trigger such a hostile action from the Magic Empire. He's pissed off that the Magic Empire has little regard for human life because all they care for is the treasures in the dungeon. He realizes that the Magic Empire would raze the capital to the ground just to have unlimited access to the dungeon. Nor sits with Lyn as they have lunch in an open restaurant. She expresses her joy because the old master gave them their reward, though they had forgotten to bring proof of taking down monsters. The old master rewarded them to congratulate them on their first successful hunt. Though Nor hesitated to be paid, the old master convinced him to accept it. Nor loved the food's taste now more than ever because he was celebrating but worried about how long Lyn intended to keep following him. He thought her family would be worried about her well-being because she had been with him for too long. Lyn thanks the chef for the meal, and she informs Nor that she's heading home. She asks him for permission to return home, which makes Nor relieved. He gladly gives her permission and thanks her for being of great help to him. Lyn pledges to keep doing right by him. Rain approaches them after searching for them around the capital. While Lyn is shocked to see him publicly, Rain asks Nor for a favor to take Lyn to a town in the mountains the next day. Nor is surprised by the request. Rain explains that he can't give Nor the full details, but pleads with him because he needs his help. He informs that arrangements have been made to get them a carriage to the location, and Nor asks if he's transporting something. Rain promises to compensate Nor adequately because he's the only one he can trust, and Nor has no choice but to accept. Rain submits a formal quest at the guild, which surprised the old master because the reward was very generous. The next day, Nor sets out with Lyn. Though the quest's reward enticed him, Nor only accepted it because he wanted to try riding a carriage for the first time. He takes in the scenery as they begin their journey. This was the best reward Nor could get because he had never ventured out of the capital. He was hopeful he would see another country on the way to the location. He suddenly notices Lyn's long face and wonders why she isn't interested in the scenery despite the flowers in full bloom. Nor hoped he would be able to set out on his journeys when he became an adventurer. Lyn apologizes to Nor for the sudden nature of the quest from her brother. Nor tells her he'll take it as her repayment for saving him during the goblin hunt. He tells her the quest isn't inconvenient because he will be paid. Lin recalls how Rain directed them to take the carriage to the city of Tauros, which is up in the mountains, and stay there for some time. While Nor was eager to start the journey, Lin didn't share in his optimism. Rain instructed them to head deeper into the mountains to the holy theocracy of Mithra, if their visit to Tauros was uneventful. Nor was surprised that all he had to do was tag along with Lin, and Rain told him to consider it a vacation trip if nothing happened. Lin hopes that nothing will happen when they arrive, and Inez assures her that nothing will happen as long as she's present. Rain gave Inez a special assignment after informing her that the capital was about to be overrun. He instructed her to flee to the Holy Kingdom of Mithra if the capital fell to the enemy's forces. Inez asked Rain if Lin knew why she was sent to Mithra, and he told her he kept it secret from Lin because she would have refused to go if he told her the reason. Inez expressed concern that she would be away when the capital needed her, but Rain told her Lin takes priority because she's the only one she can entrust to her care. He pleaded with her to accompany Lin to safety, and Inez accepted his request. They stop beside a stream to take a break, and Inez pulls Nor aside. She apologizes to him for the inconvenience, but Nor tells her to stop making such a fuss because it's just a trip. He notices she looks under the weather, and she explains that she is lost in thought. She assures him that he's safe with her, but Nor tells her he isn't worried about her safety because he's very good at running away. She tells him he doesn't have to run because she has her shield with her, but Nor doesn't see her carrying a shield. She explains that it's more convenient to keep the shield hidden. She summons her shield to Nor's bewilderment and explains that he won't be harmed if he hides behind her shield. Nor is convinced of Inez's strength as he recalls that Lin said she's as strong as Gilbert, who he sparred with. Lin told him Gilbert could take down a dragon on his own, which made him realize Gilbert and Inez were far stronger than him. He's disappointed that he struggled to take down a single goblin, as he commends Inez for being talented. This triggers memories of when Inez realized she had a mysterious power after the orphanage took her in. When her power first appeared, another orphanage tried testing it out, but she hurt herself instead. The headmaster met with Inez after he tended to the hurt orphan and asked her to show them her powers. Inez showed off her powers, which Oaken regarded as a gift from the heavens because it was rare. He explained that she could generate a sword that could cut through anything and a shield that could defend against anything. He informed her that she could destroy a nation which frightened her, but Dandalg, a member of the Six Sovereigns, promised to teach her how to use her powers so she wouldn't hurt anyone else. Though he trained her to use her gifts, Inez couldn't overcome the fear of hurting other people, so she isolated herself from them. She became a recluse who didn't care about other people's feelings and behavior. She remained a recluse until she met Nor when he introduced himself, making her remember the times Dandalg mentioned that name during her training. Back then, the enemies attacked incessantly, and Dandalg was always summoned to the front lines whenever they did. He always expressed how much easier things would be if he had his companion named Nor beside him. Inez was surprised that her foster father would acknowledge Nor but failed to acknowledge her, despite her best efforts. She felt betrayed by her father, but envious of Nor, an emotion that worsened now that they were on a trip together. She decides to let her emotions go so she doesn't waver as the shield of Houseclays. She knew her assignment was to protect Lindbergh, even if it cost her life. As they continue their journey, Nor notices a strange path cutting through the wheat fields. He realizes the path was made by something that trampled through the wheat field. Inez notices he's distracted, so she questions him. He informs her about the path on the wheat fields and tells her that something could be moving through it. Lin tells Inez to stop the carriage as she notices something making a path through the wheat fields. She uses her uncover spell to reveal the concealed monster moving through the field. Meanwhile, in the capital, everyone is in a state of panic as explosions go off everywhere. King Clay knows that war has begun as a messenger rushes in to inform him that several monsters have been spotted all over the capital. He informs the king that the warrior corps have engaged the monster, but tells him they are short on troops. Rain orders him to deploy the Sword Master Corps to barricade the roads and evacuate the citizens. He also orders the deployment of the Shadow Company and Hunter Corps to defeat as many monsters as possible so the citizens aren't harmed. King Clays can believe Doritas followed through on his threat, and Rain tells him Doritas has more tricks up his sleeves. King Clays asks for the whereabouts of the Sixth Sovereign, and Rain informs him they are preoccupied with powerful monsters that were sighted in multiple areas around the capital. Dandalg faces off against an Emperor Goblin, and he charges his men to hold their line with all their might. The other members of the Sixth Sovereign also engage monsters in different areas, while the wounded are tended to in safe zones. The king is worried because their forces are stretched thin, while Rain hopes Lin made it out of the capital before the attack commenced. The monster is being led through the wheat field by a demon boy who is hell-bent on destroying the capital when its barrier is suddenly broken. Inez recognizes the monster as a Black Death dragon, and she wonders how such a monster arrived at the capital. Nor suddenly swings into action despite warnings from Inez. The monster is about to attack the demon boy, who has resigned herself to her fate, but Nor arrives on time to intercept the monster's attack. The monster tries to attack him several times, but he counters the attacks with his parry skill. Inez points out the boy with the Black Death dragon to Lin, informing her that his presence isn't a coincidence. This makes her realize the boy is a demon folk, as she remembers when Rain asked her if she'd heard about them. She told him what she knew about them, explaining that they look similar to humans, but are demi-humans with the power to control monsters. Rain told her that the demon folk are a species closer to demons than humans, recalling an incident where they nearly wiped out Mithra 200 years prior. This made humans hunt them to extinction, but somehow their descendants survived. Rain was sure that their descendants would harbor unbound hatred for humankind. Lin realizes that the demon boy led the dragon to the capital because they don't typically approach human settlements. Inez explains that the boy lost control over the monster when her uncover spell broke his concentration. She expresses how foolish Nor is for helping the enemy because he had evil intentions. Lin offers to give Nor a hand, but Inez stops her because she thinks the dragon would defeat Nor. Nor wasn't having any challenges with the dragon, which he thinks is a toad because it's slow and weak. Compared to the goblin he faced in the Forest of Beasts, he decides to hold his own against the toad until Inez and Lin arrive to back him up. The dragon suddenly shoots a glob of poison at him, and Nor stands his ground because he knows the boy would get hurt if he dodges it. He tries to deflect it, but gets hit by the poison, which takes effect immediately. Nor's vision begins to blur as his body doesn't respond anymore. He recalls Inez calling him when he left the carriage, realizing she was trying to warn him that the toad was poisonous. Inez tells Lin the dragon earned the name of Black Death Dragon because it brings death to anything it touches with its black poison. The dragon is about to release another glob of poison, which spurs Lin to try to help Nor, but Inez stops her with her shield. Lin demands that Inez let her go, but she refuses, explaining that she must keep her safe. Inez assures her that they will remain safe behind her shield, explaining to Lin that it's pointless to help Nor because the dragon's poison is fatal. The dragon releases a more powerful blast of poison, and Inez uses her shield to protect herself and Lin from its effect. Lin tries to use her Purify magic to help Nor, but it's ineffective against the dragon's poison blast. Inez apologizes for leaving Nor at the dragon's mercy because she couldn't protect him despite wanting to. The poison clears up, and Inez is surprised that Nor is still fighting the dragon in his poisoned state. She now realizes why Dandald always wished that Nor was beside him, because he is a true hero who protects others even at the cost of his own life. She knew that his actions were pointless because he had already inhaled the poison, but he continued to stand against the dragon. The dragon releases a poison blast at him, but he blows it away with his sword. The dragon takes a swipe at him, and he defends it with his sword, but his knees suddenly give way, and he falls to the ground. He wipes the poison from his mouth, realizing that all hope is not lost.